there were messages from Luke. "Hey bud, Sandra's coming over. Can you make sure the driveway camera footage from 2 to 4 p.m. gets deleted?" Dean replied. "Got it, Dad," just like that. Routine, casual, as if helping his father cheat on his mother was another household chore. Then Sophie, my little girl, my baby, she was the alibi. Sandra texted her, "Hey sweetie, if your mom asks, I was at your soccer practice until 6, okay?" And Sophie would reply, "Okay," a smiley face. I stared at that stupid yellow smiley face for 10 full minutes, because somehow that hurt more than the affair. I thought about every time I asked where Luke had been, every time Sophie looked me in the eye and said, "Dad was at my practice." Meanwhile, a time-stamped hotel photo on that same phone showed Luke and Sandra together at 4:30 p.m. They had a whole system. Code words, warnings, signals for when I was coming home early. My own children were acting as lookouts for their father's affair with their aunt. I sat there on Dean's bedroom floor for what felt like hours. Maybe it was 1 hour, maybe 5. I just kept scrolling. My brain shut down. I felt like I was floating outside my own body, watching some poor woman discover the ruins of her life. I took pictures of everything with my own phone, every text, every photo, every lie. My hands didn't even shake. I didn't cry. I felt nothing. Shock that deep is like anesthesia. When I finally stood up, my legs barely worked. I placed the phone back exactly where I found it, behind the books, like a loaded weapon waiting patiently. Then I walked downstairs. And the scene I found in my kitchen was so grotesquely normal, it felt like a horror movie. Luke was at the stove, humming along to the radio, making my favorite pasta. Sandra sat at the kitchen island, sipping my Chardonnay, scrolling through her phone like she owned the place. Dean and Sophie sat at the table pretending to do homework. A perfect family evening. A perfect lie. "Hey babe," Luke said, smiling. That easy, handsome smile I used to love. "Dinner's almost ready." I smiled back. It felt like my face was made of glass. I walked over, kissed him on the cheek. His skin was warm. I felt absolutely nothing. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat beside my sister. "How was work today, sis?" she asked, fake concern dripping from every word. "Good," I said calmly. "Really good. Closed the Henderson deal." Her eyes lit up. "Oh, Sydney, that's amazing." She squeezed my arm. Her touch felt like a spider crawling across my skin. We sat down for dinner. Luke served the pasta. I watched them eat, the food I paid for, in the house I paid for, living the life I paid for, while they plotted to destroy me, and we talked about normal things, weekend plans, Dean's graduation, Sophie's school play. She showed me a drawing from art class, and I smiled, because by then I already knew exactly what I was going to do. It was a picture of our family, all of us smiling, Luke with his arm around me, Dean standing awkwardly like teenage boys do, Sophie grinning proudly as she handed me the drawing she had made in art class, Sandra standing beside us like she belonged there, like she hadn't been sleeping with my husband behind my back, like she hadn't been helping destroy my life. I told Sophie it was beautiful, and my voice didn't even crack. I looked at my daughter, my baby girl, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize her. She looked like a stranger, a co-conspirator, someone smiling with blood on her hands. It was just a normal family dinner. Except now I knew every smile was fake. Every laugh was a lie. Every "love you, Mom" was carefully rehearsed nonsense. Every single moment was theater. And I had been the only person in the audience who didn't know the ending. Later that night, in our bedroom, Luke reached for me. It was the first time in months he had shown any real affection. And I let him, not because I wanted to. Because I needed him to believe nothing had changed. I felt detached. Like I was watching someone else's life from across the room, a woman playing the role of wife, going through motions she no longer believed in. The whole time, my mind was somewhere else. I kept thinking about him and Sandra. In this room, in this bed, our bed. I wondered how many times they had been here while I was away on business trips, closing deals to fund the life they were planning without me. When it was over, he rolled toward me and rested against my chest like he always used to. Soft, comfortable, familiar. He whispered, "I love you." I stared at the dark ceiling, and I said the biggest lie of my life. "Love you too." He fell asleep within minutes, peaceful, breathing deeply, looking so innocent it was almost insulting, and I just lay there, wide awake, staring at the ceiling until sunrise. At first I had felt numb, but sometime around 3 a.m. the numbness disappeared, and something else took its place, Something colder, harder, sharper, clarity. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a strategist. And I was about to plan the complete demolition of their perfect little world. A lot of people, maybe even some of you listening, would probably say I should have confronted them right then. Screamed, cried, thrown the phone across the room, walked downstairs and slammed it on the dinner table. Watched their faces fall apart. Believe me, I imagined it. I imagined Sandra's mascara tears, Luke scrambling for excuses, Dean staring at the floor, Sophie crying. I imagined all of it. But then what? A messy fight, denials, gaslighting, Luke telling me I was overreacting, Sandra playing the victim, some version of you were never home. You were always working. You pushed us away. The classic defense. Make the betrayed woman feel guilty for being betrayed. No. I've spent 15 years building a business. And if business teaches you anything, it's this. When you strike once. You make it count. You gather evidence. You control the timing. You secure your leverage. You don't walk into a negotiation screaming. You walk in holding all the cards. And now I had all the cards. The 2 weeks that followed became a masterclass in living a double life. On the surface, I was still Sydney. Busy, tired, successful, the loving wife, the supportive mother, the dependable sister. I smiled, I cooked dinner, I approved school forms, I kissed my husband goodbye. I reminded Sandra about client meetings. I played the role perfectly. Underneath, I was building their collapse, and I worked with a focus I hadn't felt since the early days of building my company from scratch. My first move was simple. I needed a lawyer, not just any lawyer, the right lawyer. I spent 2 full days researching, interviewing, and quietly vetting the 3 most ruthless divorce attorneys in the state. The first one was too polished, too interested in billable hours. He treated my marriage like a business transaction. The second was worse, condescending. The kind of man who looked at me like I was an emotional wife who needed to calm down and accept reality. I almost walked out 5 minutes in. Then I met Samantha Thornbull, and I knew immediately. She was in her 60s, elegant, immaculate. The kind of woman who could destroy your life without ever raising her voice. Her eyes looked like they had seen every ugly truth human beings were capable of, and none of it surprised her anymore. She had a reputation for eviscerating cheating spouses in court. People whispered her name like a warning. Perfect. I walked into her office, sat down, and told her everything. No dramatics, just facts. Then I handed her my phone. She scrolled through the messages, the photos, the receipts, the proof. She didn't offer sympathy. She didn't say she was sorry. She just leaned back in her chair, smiled a thin, sharp smile, and said, "Oh, this is good." She looked at me over her glasses. "This is very, very good." That was the moment I knew they were in trouble. It turns out my state still takes adultery very seriously in divorce proceedings, especially when major assets are involved. And there were major assets. The house, investments, retirement accounts, business equity, everything Luke thought he'd walk away with, everything Sandra thought she'd inherit by default. Those photos, gold. The fact that Sandra was my employee made it even better. She and Luke had used company property for their affair, her company car, her company phone, my office, my resources, my payroll, my reputation. Samantha called it a gift. It opened the door to civil claims for misuse of company resources, breach of fiduciary duty, and workplace misconduct. Translation. They hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. They had handed me legal ammunition, and I was going to use every single bullet. With Samantha guiding me, I began quietly dismantling the financial life we had built together. Slowly, methodically. At night, after Luke fell asleep, my home office became my war room. Laptop open. Bank statements spread across the desk. Wine glass untouched beside me. No tears, just strategy. First, I paid off every joint credit card, every single one, down to 0. Then I called each company and closed the accounts. The reason I gave was simple: financial consolidation. No suspicion, no alarms, just another responsible wife handling finances. The irony almost made me laugh. For 18 years, I built the life they were trying to steal. Now I was making sure there would be nothing left for them to take. And I was only getting started. The next morning, I went straight to my company's HR department and rerouted my direct deposit into a brand new individual bank account in my name only. That was the first real move. The salary that funded their entire lifestyle was now behind a locked door they didn't even know existed. No alarms. No suspicion, just paperwork. I started moving money carefully. I couldn't simply drain our joint savings without raising questions. That would have been reckless. So instead, I created a series of completely legitimate business loans to a shell corporation owned by an old college friend I trusted with my life. I drafted every document myself. On paper, it was a smart strategic investment. A temporary capital placement, perfectly legal, perfectly clean. In reality, it was me moving my money out of reach before the demolition started. Then came the toys. One evening, I came home and casually announced I was selling the boat, and Luke's precious sports car. You would have thought I'd announced his own funeral. What? Why? He asked, horrified. Sydney, I love that car. We have so many memories on that boat. Oh, I know, probably some of them with my sister. I pressed my fingers to my temples and sighed like a woman burdened by financial stress. I had even practiced looking exhausted in the car before I walked in. Honey, I'm just worried about the market, I said softly. I think we need to be smarter. Less luxury, more security. I need to feel safer financially. And to my surprise, he bought it. Completely. He even wrapped an arm around me like the picture-perfect supportive husband. Of course, babe, I didn't realize you were this stressed. Whatever makes you feel secure. Oh, I'm sure he was supportive. Less debt for him to worry about when he and Sandra thought they'd be riding off into the sunset with half my company and my assets. I liquidated our entire joint investment portfolio. Every stock, every fund, every shared financial cushion. The market's about to tank, Luke, I told him. Trust me, my gut says we need to pull out now. He who couldn't tell the difference between a stock and a bond just nodded. Because that's the thing about people who underestimate you. They never see the knife until it's already in. He thought I was having some kind of financial anxiety spiral. He had no idea I was preparing for war. Next came the business. That part required finesse. I couldn't just fire Sandra. That would tip my hand too early, so I did something much better. I promoted her. I gave her a shiny new title, Director of Client Operations. Fancy title, small salary bump, much bigger responsibility. She was thrilled. She actually cried in my office, said she was so grateful for my trust. I almost admired the performance. Almost. What she didn't know was that her new employment contract, quietly drafted by Samantha's office, contained clauses making her personally liable for major client losses, negligence, and breaches of contract. Buried deep in the legal fine print. Exactly where arrogant people never bother to look. Then I assigned her the most difficult, demanding, impossible clients we had. The kind of accounts that could collapse under one missed deadline. And while she was busy playing executive, I documented everything. Every missed deadline, every client complaint, every suspicious expense report, every working lunch that somehow involved expensive wine and a hotel receipt. There were many. And then there was home. I kept performing. The perfect wife, the perfect mother, family dinners, homework conversations, school forms, listening to Luke talk endlessly about his tennis matches like he was training for Wimbledon instead of adultery. One night, Dean found me sitting in the study, staring at spreadsheets. He hovered in the doorway. Mom, you seem different lately. That almost broke me. Almost. You're always working. Everything okay? The faint concern in his voice made me want to laugh or scream. I forced a tired smile. Just work stress, buddy. Big new project. A lot of pressure. He nodded slowly. Sophie stood in the hallway behind him, watching. They exchanged a look. They thought I was getting suspicious. Good. Let them feel it. Let them sit in that discomfort. I had read one message from Dean that I could never forget.